It's summertime, and let's face it, there's nothing costumers like myself love more than getting to incorporate staying cool in the water and our costumes, as long as it's something we can wash later. I decided I wanted to make an epic crown to go with this Greek Chiton and go hang out with some friends for a water-themed photo shoot as the Queen of Cups from the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. To make the crown, because it was probably the most complicated part of all of this, I ended up thrifting some old vintage necklaces and shells and leis and things like that. I also ran through my local hobby craft store and found some beads and jewelry findings. There's a couple of different headbands that I was playing with, trying to decide which one I really wanted to use as the base for this. Some metallic spray paint to just make everything a uniform color. Those classic zip ties that some costumers use for corset boning, and some seashells. So I hope you're up for a slightly not historical project today to just indulge in the fun of summer. One of the first steps that I had in prepping all of my crown bits is washing the seashells that I bought to try and make a shell-related base for the crown. It came in a box that had them kind of coated in this white powder. I'm chalking it up to being calcium that kind of was getting exfoliated and ground off as the shells rubbed each other inside the box. But that powder was making it really hard for the paint to actually adhere to the shells. A little bit of lukewarm water and a little bit of dish soap is taking all of that right off and making these so much easier to work with. It's also reviving some of the vibrant colors that they would have had. So I didn't paint all of them. I did only paint a handful of the ones that were already just plain white, so I could keep the others for other projects. But after they're washed and rinsed, they're just going to air dry over here on the towel so I don't risk breaking them by toweling them off and dropping them on the floor or something silly like that, because your girl's a klutz. So the next step while all of the shells are drying is doing a little bit of first steps of design. I needed to figure out the basic idea of what I was doing with my headband, and I was really inspired by my friend Julia's, I want to say, the World Tarot look that she had done a few years ago, and it incorporated this headpiece with a bunch of rays coming out of it. I will link her Instagram down in the description in case you want to go check her out. She's an amazing dancer up in the Fort Collins area. So the first thing I do is start zip tying a bunch of these big, heavy cable zip ties onto my crown, and I tried to space them out evenly, and I accidentally alternated which way they were going. So I decided, you know what? We're going to lean into it and see what kind of a texture difference I get for my crown by alternating them every couple zip ties. It was kind of fun. I don't know that I loved it enough to repeat it, and I don't know that I hated it enough to redo it. So I just tried to make sure it was symmetrical on either side of that center piece. I did put the one that's going to be the center top on first, so I could evenly space out from there. You do want to make sure that you're not putting them on there so tight that you can't move them around if you need to, just to make sure that you do have that space to adjust if they're not completely even one direction or the other. Have you been doing any fun arts and crafts projects for a summer-inspired costume? I would love to hear about it down in the comments section. Please do let me know what you're working on. Once I started getting all the zip ties onto the headband, I was realizing it was going to start to get really unwieldy. So I decided maybe it's time to trim some of these down just a bit and create a slightly more shaped look rather than a weird Lady Liberty situation. If you remember Miss Congeniality from back in the 2000s, that's what this first step reminded me of. But to shape them up, I took a ruler and I just sort of did an even pace all the way around, and I slanted the initial snips towards the middle until I got to the center top, and then that one I did sort of a mitered peak cut out on it, a few inches taller than the rest. We didn't measure that particular point as well as I would have hoped. Do not use your fabric scissors for this part of your project. It will make you cry. These zip ties will jack up your fabric scissors. That's how strong they are. Pick a different pair of craft scissors to do this with. Fast forward from some spray painting and letting everything sort of chill overnight. I then got to do the really fun part the next evening, and that's hot gluing on a bunch of little beads and details, starting with some glass pearls and some freshwater pearls from my bead selection. The big thing to remember is if you are going to be in a really, really hot climate, I'm thinking like the American Southwest or something where hot glue might not hold its shape up very well, you might want to find a different adhesive to start putting these different pieces onto your crown. As it is, the hot glue wasn't doing great for me, but it wasn't doing awful, and I was on a time crunch, so I just stuck with what I had on hand. I would be lying if I told you I didn't stop and put this thing on my head after just about every step to kind of get an idea for the weight and how it was changing in its movement. I really like the shorter version of the zip ties rather than the full length. It's way more manageable. And I started playing with the idea of using more of the green gem jewelry pieces. So initially I was going to glue them all over the shells, but then I decided maybe they just become some accent points for the bead drapes that I wanted to put on this headdress. And then the more I played with it, the more I realized those bead drapes are going to need to be a separate piece. So I started creating some clips with the little gemstone pieces on top. And from there, I can drape the beads from each of these clips and make my headpiece more of a two-piece situation. It's going to make it way easier for me to reuse different parts of it for different costumes, like if I want to be a mermaid, or if this crown fits some other allegorical thing later. I started getting down to the wire to get this project completed, so rather than restringing all of the beads and trying to bead them off of the clips myself, I left them in their pre-made bundles from the craft store. I actually liked the order that the beads were in, so all I really needed to do was loop through the edges of the fish-lined knots, which honestly that string was stronger than most of what I had at the house at the time. And once those were all secured in a bundle, I could start pulling those onto the clasps and wrapping that around, knotting it every once in a while to make them secured onto the clips that would be going in my hair. This step was surprisingly tricky, and it took a little bit of dexterity to figure out how exactly to wrap the thread around the clip in a way that would make it be secure as I was knotting things off. And it's me, so of course I am sewing something on this headpiece, even though it's primarily hot glue and zip ties. Now, the hot glue actually did help to keep the thread all in one place after I got it wrapped around and secured. And it also gave me an anchor point to put the gems on top. So those gems end up hiding all of the threads and they create a lovely decorative finish on top. It's kind of a win-win. They're beautiful, they look intentional, but they're also kind of doing a quick and dirty job. Because this one needed to hold in place, I did hold on to it a little bit more until I felt the glue really dry and take off, and then I cut my threads. As far as hair jewelry goes, I thought this little piece turned out really, really well, and I look forward to getting to wear it with maybe some other cosplays too. And then it's time to try it all on together. I still haven't decided if I like that clip better going forward into towards my eyes or if I like it going back. I'm probably gonna still need to play with it a bit to figure that out. But it basically anchors everything on the top of my head so things don't fall down my eyes. And then the side clips will clip into my hair at different points to make sure that it drapes nicely and nothing's falling too far forward. So they're not even. I'm kind of playing with it in this particular run just as proof of concept while I get my big old crown headband on to set them together. Isn't the look super fun? I can't get the whole thing and my head into the frame, at least not until I go to the local beach and start wearing it for the photo shoot. So, are you ready to see what the full look looks like one more time? I know I primarily do historical, and historical looks definitely did inform this, especially the Art Nouveau looks of the late 19th, early 20th century. But I really loved this outfit and how much fun it was to wear and make and how cool it felt. So I hope you have a wonderful time. Definitely give the video a like if you've watched this long. It would mean a lot to me. And I will see you after my next adventure. Bye.